And like I said, I do hope everyone is staying safe and doing okay. So yeah, so many thanks indeed for registering, hearing more about experience design or XD. So whether you've signed up because you're struggling for things to do during lockdown, or whether you're keen to hear more about XD, then thank you either way for registering. So I've been working as an XD professional for 14 years now, working with businesses and government public organisations, helping them to design better experiences and services across any touchpoint. So whether that be digital or physical or online, offline. I still remain sort of 50% hands-on in designing and delivering outcomes, which I still absolutely love to do. But I also spend sort of 50% of my time leading teams, sort of XD teams, building XD propositions, and I'm also continually learning. I'm always open to learn, and yeah, I do have a passion, and I do really enjoy it. So over the last sort of few years, I've seen the increased adoption of experience design, and one I'm certainly an advocate for, which does feel like a natural step in the industry, which is where I'll talk later in the webinar about the issues this hopefully will help solve. So I've begun to use the term myself over the last sort of 2 to 3 years, and why I've put on this talk really, which will provide a bit more insight in terms of what XD is, what it means, and why it is an important progression for the industry. And in terms of Q&As, if anyone does have any Q&As, questions as we kind of go through this particular webinar, then please do use the kind of chat messaging facility in the right-hand side within Zoom. And so yeah, so due to time restrictions, I may not be able to answer these, but I'll certainly collate these straight after the session. And then I'll send out some responses afterwards, sort of via PDF directly to your email address of those that have registered for this event. So this event will also be recorded, which is completely optional if you wish to watch this back, but it's also to allow people to view this who couldn't attend today's session. So I suppose moving on to the presentation itself. So what we'll cover is the first kind of element I'd like to run through, just to highlight exactly what we're going to talk through for the next sort of half an hour or so. So the first one is around setting the scene, where we're going to go back to 1980s, where things started to change and the term UX gained traction. Then we're going to fast forward to 2020, whereby UX realistically is pretty synonymous now with digital touchpoints and designing for that particular element. Then we're going to look at sort of what is experience design or XD, so summarising the key activities that go into to make up the umbrella term. Then we're going to look at the rise of CX and service design, certainly over the last sort of couple of years, and where this is certainly kind of starting to kind of gather traction, which is hugely important for our industry. Also starting to kind of understand more about the issues experience design is looking to solve. And then finally, what do internal design teams look like in the future? So setting the scene. So before I explain a little bit more about experience design, it's important to provide a little bit of context. So for this, I'm going to delve back into the 1980s. So there's a picture of Michael Douglas, starring as Gordon Gekko, as well as also another infamous image of a marriage of a very popular TV series in the mid-1980s, which all feels like an awfully long time ago, even more so in current today, where even January this year feels like an awful long time ago. But there was another key event that happened during the 1980s, which was the release of Don Norman's The Design of Everyday Things. He wanted to highlight that truly good design is based on the needs and psychology of people, where the term UX was actually a thing back then, where it's about combining great design and usability aligned to the needs of people. And that wasn't just digital touchpoints. That was any type of engagement or experience or touchpoint. sort of online, and majority of it sort of offline, really. But back then, UX referred to the design and experience of anything, like I just said, such as the electrical equipment, the design of that as a product, designing museums and aircraft, designing for the real world and the context of people and their needs. So it wasn't, like I said, just about digital devices as it is today. Back then, because obviously these were a lot less common compared to what we have now. So if you haven't read The Design of Everyday Things, a book by Don Norman, then I certainly recommend it wholeheartedly to go out there, find a copy and give it a read. So fast forward to today. So although the UX term started out to mean designing for people, over the years it's kind of become synonymous with the usability of digital touchpoints, so such as websites, native apps. These are kind of now really what people class as UX. So companies and organisations sort of focusing on independent touchpoints. So companies and organisations of all sizes have spent a lot of time and resources focusing on designing apps and responsive websites, focusing on the user within the context of the touchpoint only, and ignoring or not aligning to the needs and psychology of people. It's been about getting isolated products out to the market, serving a specific need, or maybe not serving a need at all. I've worked for companies like this, lacking clarity and direction, and we made apps and websites to be as usable as possible, and they were. But we were designing for users within the app with little or no context of people, their environment, and understanding psychology, but also lack of clarity around the business strategy, really, which they never had. And ultimately, just because an end solution, like I said, such an app or website, is usable, doesn't make it relevant, doesn't make it useful, really, for people, and doesn't really serve a particular need and that people require to help them get through their day-to-day lives better. Also, project teams within companies were isolated from one another and worked in silo projects, which still happens today. I used to be part of that, focusing on the specific outcome for this one product. So research and design were taken seriously, or in some cases they were. Let me rephrase that. In some cases they were. Not every single project had dedicated research time allocated to it. But any research that did happen was realistically in the context of the digital touchpoint and ensuring it was usable. So could a user complete this task quickly and efficiently? But there wasn't much, actually. What need is this overall proposition looking to serve? What are the emotions and behaviours of people? And how can we design something great to align to this? What does the overall end-to-end experience and service look like across multiple touchpoints, both online and offline, to be seamless and consistent? So the right approach may not have actually been to create a new digital touchpoint in the first place, or a new product in the first place. Maybe actually it was about improving customer experiences. It was actually about improving the internal processes for how staff directly engage with customers or citizens. That's what, it's not just always about focusing on, right, what digital touchpoint can we get out to users and customers to engage with that. And so that was what it was about. It's about understanding much more about the context and the overall end-to-end experience and the prioritization to understand what do we need to do first to help us achieve our end goal of whatever that may be. And finally, losing context of the bigger picture. So the mobile app and website could be the greatest app ever created. It's usable, intuitive, engaging, but like I said, if it doesn't align to the overall needs of people and isn't relevant, it's not going to serve the key purpose it should. Companies will have wasted money to kind of get to that point of a project teams coming together to design and develop something that they felt was going to work, and it is very usable. It's just that issues arise when it's not directly aligned to what people actually need and aligned to their overall behaviours. So, what is experience design? Experience design is fundamentally designing for any experience, no matter the touch point, focusing on designing for people and their needs. And when we talk about people, we talk about customers, but also staff. So internal people within your business or organisation need to have the tools and processes to work as well as they can to ensure they can do their job properly, to ensure they understand the expectations of them as to how they help design a great experience for the customer, no matter that touch point, whether it be face-to-face in branch, or whether it be over the telephone, or whether it be live chat, across all kinds of different touch points. But experience design on its own is too broad, which is why we typically use it as an umbrella term made up of the following key activities. So the first one is experience strategy, which is understanding the future vision of how you want to engage with your customers, citizens, patients, across both digital and physical touch points. Or there may be no digital touch points at all. It may always be face-to-face or physical. So this is a vision based on their behaviours, emotions, environment, triggers and goals, helping to inform you and inform propositions and services. The people you engage with today may not have the same habits or behaviours in the medium and long term, or maybe your proposition will steer to a completely new audience for the better. So once you have understood the overall ambitions and vision for the future, it's then time to define a strategy for the company or organisation. So you've got a vision, now it's a case of putting those building blocks and whatever needs to be achieved across 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years, and put a strategy in place to align to what you want that vision to be. So it's basically also helping you to ensure you're on track. So have you actively achieved what you wanted to achieve in the first 6 months, whether that be embedding new type of technology, whether that be embedding a new type of internal process for your staff, whatever that may be, you need building blocks to get to that point in time in the future. And you need to ensure that whatever you are, you're prioritising the right order. So when you do go live with your complete proposition, it feels like it's done in the right order and one that's aligned to your businesses, to ensure that you align to your customers and what they want, what they need in the right order. So an example of sort of experience strategy, and I'm going to use Disney as a case study throughout the sort of next few slides. So a number of years ago, 5 senior people wanted to transform the experience of visitors to the park. This wasn't just about making improvements to existing infrastructure or tweaking digital experiences, so whether it be improving the app or whether it be introducing a new ride. They wanted to create a new fundamental future vision as to how they could provide an even greater magical experience, reducing some of the key issues that were negatively impacting this. So they wanted to create what is now known as the magic wristbands. This was their vision, born out of years of research and understanding of people that came to the park, analysed their behaviours, and so what they did with this, they then tested with a number of the public in 2013 to validate the vision they had, driven out of the understanding of people in their parks and understanding of their needs and what was kind of limiting the experience. And ultimately, once they'd started to gather a little bit of insights in terms of were people interested in this vision of the future, they then started to kind of define a strategy to make that a reality over sort of 1, 2, 3 years, of which the team eventually swelled to 1,000 people. So now we move on to CX and service design. So this CX and service design are intrinsically linked really, but there are a couple of slight differences between the two. So CX is about fully understanding the complete end-to-end journey a customer, citizen or patient goes through across all digital and physical touchpoints at any point of an engagement spanning time and multiple life stages. So the key artifact within CX, customer experience, is known as an experience map, or sometimes it's also known as a customer journey. So this should not be confused with a user journey, because a user journey is much more low level for a specific digital touchpoint. So for example, how would a user navigate from one page to another page? What features would be on those pages? So that's a kind of low level detail, which we don't need to worry about at the CX and service design level as such. So service design is how businesses and organisations shape, design and implement the service to deliver the aspirational customer experience identified, which is directly aligned to the experience map within the CX work. So the key artifact within service design is the service blueprint, which is the internal visualization of how a company or organisation, including government departments as well, will function to offer the required service at every step of the customer interaction across both online and or online. So across digital and physical and sort of digital touch points. Across different departments, teams and actions, as well as also processes and technology. So it's about creating clarity and consistency. For example, a customer experience map could highlight what key events customers would typically want to engage with the call centre teams. This may lead to embedding live chat to improve customer service on the website or mobile app, by helping to reduce wait times on the call centres who are responsible for replying and picking up the phone. Or maybe it's a new team. How long is it open for? What happens if they need to escalate a query? Is this via a manual email or maybe via an automated some kind of process? If so, if it is automated, what kind of tech is used? Is this scalable? How quickly? So they're the kind of things that go into thinking about the internal processes for every single eventuality. So understanding, is it automated or can actually be scalable? So in terms of the current crisis, there were some companies that have suddenly had a huge adoption to their products, which has now meant some of the processes which were handled by a couple of people or a few people are now struggling to cope, because those manual processes, people can only do so much, and also there's consistency within that as well. Sometimes there may be a few issues whereby elements are missed in the process, just to kind of cut a few corners and get to that fulfillment as quickly as possible maybe. Whereas service design helps you to kind of really kind of get an insight of your internal processes, really understand more about what areas you need to scale and how you're going to scale that. As well as also areas that you feel like, no matter the situation, they're fairly solid and they're kind of fairly rigid. So it's all about your internal processes for staff and internal actions as a business to deliver the defined experience end to end across all the touch points. So continuing with the Disney case study. So at this stage, for a CX and service design, they now have a validated vision and strategy from the experience strategy work, but this was still high level. The next phase of designing their future vision was to design and define the end-to-end experience for a customer. Varied as well for adults and children, because they both have different needs and behaviours. So from booking the holiday to receiving the wristband in the post months before going to the park, to receive a notification shortly before arrival on your phone, to making it as easy as possible to check in without dedicated check-in desks, contactless key entries, removing the need to carry luggage to the room, how to pay for your food and drinks within the park, to how you're being recognised by staff by your first name, and then ultimately keeping track of your spend within the park, how to kind of pay your bill at the end and ultimately check out, and finally reliving those magical moments when you get home and you're jet lagged, but then ultimately triggering an interaction to kind of ensure that you rebook again for the future. So this is designing for the end-to-end experience, and it's designing a great service to kind of go into that. It's kind of combining human interaction with technology to ultimately help you do that. So following on from that, it's also about sort of focusing on sort of physical products that, like I said, that communicate with varying different touch points. But it's ultimately creating that consistency across all the end-to-end touch points, and that consistency of embedding technology with human needs or people needs to create an ultimately fantastic end customer experience and that embedment of customer centricity. Another example of this is the banking sector. So it isn't just about making it easier to move money from one account to another via a banking app. This is just a small part, although it is obviously a crucial part. It's still a small part of the overall banking experience and service that a banking provider has with their customers across the entirety of a lifetime. So from 16, opening up your first ever savings account, junior savings account maybe. And then when you go to university, you have a current account. Maybe you then start to kind of think about a credit card, and then you start to kind of think about saving for a house, and then you kind of move into buying a mortgage, and then you potentially start to think about investment products after that to make more of your money, but then also potentially thinking more about for pensions. So there's so many different life stages, and that's what CX and services design is about, is not just focus on the isolated touch point, focusing on the isolated engagement of a particular point in time. A end-to-end experience is made up of a series of different life stages, different segments that users go through. Sometimes there could be a day gap between one segment finishing to another starting. Sometimes there could be 6 years or 10 years. It's all varied really, but that provides the context to help ensure that if you understand the different segments and the segmentation of how your end-to-end journey is broken up, and understanding the gaps and why those gaps appear, but then understanding why people then look to re-engage and to what their needs or how those needs have changed and how their behaviours have now changed into different sort of life stages. It just helps provide that context of kind of what kind of looking for really, and what propositions you need to offer to help ensure that you align to people and help them get through that stage as effectively and sort of at their side as much as possible, and that sort of empathy as well. So user experience, which I'm sure is very common to people sort of watch this video, they've heard numerous times, I'm sure. So like I said, this is about designing for digital touchpoints, what UX is synonymously aligned to these days. So designing for responsive websites, native apps, internal systems, as we currently do today. So UX that you hear today, the formative research, evaluative research, the UX design, sort of wireframes, etc. That is UX today. But the benefit of having UX within this kind of, I suppose, tiered approach in a way, whereby UX is driven on the back of a defined strategy and vision, which leads to shaping core propositions across different touch points and how users engage with those common propositions across offline and online, shaped by the CX and service design work. So when the project teams are embedded and created, made up of UXers, developers, testers, PMs, within that kind of agile environment, this is where the teams have much more clarity and context as to what they're designing, because they can directly align it to where the business is looking to head in a few years' time, where the vision is, what the strategy is, where this particular touch point sits within the end-to-end experience. So we're understanding more about how the offline is merging with the online. So it's all about the context. The greater the context, the greater the relevancy of your UX and I suppose digital products that you're looking to deliver and push to the market is only going to provide a great experience. And fundamentally, it's going to be based on the actual needs of behaviours and people and understand their environment in much greater context. So also based on the low-level needs of that kind of start to get formed out in project teams. So I know your user stories, your epics, they are low level because they're based on the particular product that you're looking to introduce. So a proposition could be made up of a series of different end-to-end experiences, of which that product may form one part of that. So like I mentioned, it's around conducting your formative research, your design. So that could be a case of your designing your wireframes, your prototypes, and then also evaluative research. So once you've created your wireframes and prototypes, starting to gather feedback at regular intervals to ensure that your product is as usable as possible. But it's not about having to conduct research that goes beyond that. It's not about using that time to conduct research to help you understand the behaviours and actually, does this product serve an actual need in the first place? Because that should have already been defined within the experience strategy work, within the CX and service design work, because that's what that's there for, to help drive and clarity around the overall ambitions that you're looking to design and deliver to your customers or citizens and patients. So the UX is now the low-level micro detail to understand what does that actually look like from a digital proposition. And also I'd just like to say, within that kind of UX kind of process, this is where you also have regular engagement with your copywriters, visual designers, UI developers, collaboratively to help shape the proposed design direction within the kind of UX work and structure. Because ultimately, the designers, visual designers, copywriters, UI developers, they're going to play a huge part in making that proposition a reality and making that sort of digital touch point a reality and taking it to the next level. So the rise of CX and service design. So over the last couple of years, there's certainly been a bigger shift in the focusing much more on a complete end-to-end offering across any touch point, both online and offline. So this is to do with sort of focusing on the human element based on behaviours for people, whether that's customers, citizens, patients or staff. So the reason why there's been a big increase in this is a fundamental part has been down to the governments and how they've started to embed internal teams that are specifically focused on improving services. So this could be improving patient care within hospitals, between inpatient and outpatient, but also it's to do with government departments that focus on the benefit system. So how is the service being improved to ensure that people can kind of receive their benefits easier and quicker? Ministry of Justice, how are people that are sort of rehabilitating on the back of serving time in a particular establishment, how are they kind of sort of being helped to kind of get back into work? And all that is part of the service, and all that service is part of needs to be designed, and it needs to be designed in a way that aligns to a certain structure to ensure that service blueprints are being created and we can introduce consistency. So no matter if it's in the north or the south or wherever you may be in the UK, you are kind of exposed to a particular consistent service that has been designed by professionals that have that context of what's been looking to be achieved. But there's also, like I mentioned, government departments are doing really well starting to introduce service design activities. But other companies are also realising the importance. So take, for example, Barclays and Sainsbury's. they've started to embed experience design teams, which I think is really, really important because, take Sainsbury's, for example, they have branches that people go in to visit, and ultimately there needs to be how those stores are laid out is kind of part of the service to ensure that the experience in a shop is as great as it can be. So people want to go back again and again. Obviously, it's slightly changed in today's world, but they would have also, in order to kind of adapt to how they have adapted today to cope with the outbreak. Some companies are better than others because they understand much more about their internal processes. So the more they know about their internal processes, the more quickly they can kind of react to these certain circumstances. And also they have an online experience, which is all about the digital product, digital experience, but also they have a click and collect, which is an amalgamation of the two, because you place an order online, but then there's a physical touch point where you go in and order. So they're not two journeys where you expect two project teams to design, someone designs a product to organise the click and collect and deliver that. And then another project team, right, what's the customer experience when they arrive in store? And then another project team, what's the internal processes to ensure that when they receive the order, the people in the branch can then quickly, they can quickly get the order together. So when that customer turns up, they can pick that order up efficiently and get it into their car quickly. You'd expect all that to be done by sort of one team, or certainly have a high level view as to how that is going to happen end to end, not isolated, because that's where you get frustrations in the process, where one journey ends and then another begins. It's that consistency all the way through the different touch points. And that's what companies really need to move to ensure that we create consistency, but we remove that jarring of experiences where you can almost tangibly feel where one journey ends and one starts. It shouldn't be the case. It should be a very seamless and natural progression from one touch point to another as part of an overall objective to complete a goal. And that goal for a consumer, in this case today, for example, is to go and collect my shopping and ultimately fill my cupboards up with shopping, with food. Like about service design is nothing new. So service design has been around since the mid-50s, where local departments and governments, organisations have been designing for local citizens since the 50s. But I suppose digital invasion during the mid-2000s has muddied the water a little bit, and people just assume that digital products, in order for us to launch a proposition, it needs to have a digital product. It needs to be an app. It needs to be a website. That's a be-all and end-all. It's not. So what issues will experience design help solve? So like I mentioned, the be-all and end-all of an experience doesn't start and end with a digital touchpoint. So take Monzo banking app, for example. So trust and experience is huge to them because they have no physical branches. So core to their proposition is a digital app and ensuring it's usable. But they're also thinking beyond that. How do they engage more with their customers? So for example, they have an open meeting every Friday where customers can visit their head office and hear directly from the design team about progress, upcoming features. They can ask any questions directly. So although the fundamental proposition is an app, they're trying to think outside of digital engagement or digital interfaces as the be-all and end-all of an engagement. They want to see actually how can they kind of go much further than that. So that's kind of one example. A bugbear of mine, a huge bugbear of mine, is the very confusing job roles and profiles that are out in the market, which fundamentally they all mean the same thing, a lot of them. So they may have a very different job title, but if you go through the spec and read between the lines, it's all the same. And yeah, that's been a huge issue for the industry in terms of not having that clarity. And I think that's where businesses and organisations sort of fall down as well, in terms of without that clarity, then they're kind of not sure how they need to progress to ensure they deliver a great experience to their customers. So I hope the move to experience design starts to narrow the gap and increase clarity and improve focus, whereby realistically we should be looking into strategists, CX and service designers, and UX designers. So I think 3 core job roles are crucial to simplifying our industry and make it, and like I said, as increasing clarity and improving focus. I also think there's a lack of direction at senior level of businesses. So businesses adopting a move towards experience design shows a commitment to appreciating all areas of experience they want to improve. So a vision of where they want to be, designing a great experience across any touch point, understanding how best to shape their internal processes and teams to deliver a great service, and then also design a digital touch points with much greater context, understanding and alignment. So when I kind of talk about internal processes and teams, it's great that they want to move towards making it more customer centric, but a crucial part of that is what do they need to do internally to ensure that they have the right processes and have the staff doing the right job roles, and they have much more clarity around what people's expectations are internally of what they need to do to ensure that they can offer that great experience and how their role fits in. Another big problem, another big bugbear of mine is companies not taking research seriously enough or understanding the importance. So when understanding people, so companies have started to embed research practices within UX activities, within projects, but this is always in silos of the actual website or app at low level interaction. So how would users seamlessly navigate from one page to another, ensuring they can do that quickly, intuitively, engagingly, empathetically, whatever it may be. The research is in the context of the app itself. Realistically, businesses are not very good at conducting research to really drive behaviours of who their users are, sort of who their customers are, and fundamentally driving research based on people as to their environments, their needs, and sort of get into much more macro level research really to help drive future propositions, not just that low level ensuring the app works, because the app may work, but if it's not relevant to what people need, then there's no relevance to it, and there's not going to be a huge number of uptake, and then companies would have wasted a lot of money. And then finally, this is about creating a customer centricity approach and framework, designing for customers and staff across any touch point. So the final section looking at is designing for teams. Excuse me. So in designing internal teams and understanding the roles of the future, really. So the first one is companies renaming themselves and creating new departments called experience design teams. This is fundamental for me. This certainly needs to kind of happen. There's obviously some companies that have started to do that, which is great. But I know at the moment there's obviously companies that have set up UX teams, but I certainly feel like these need to be expanded much more. Also including roles, so within this experience design sort of team department, roles as strategists, CX and service designers, and also UX designers. But I also think there should be roles as experience designers, so professionals who have had hands-on experience across all 3 activities and who can help organisations and businesses ultimately work towards creating a great end-to-end experience and service. And also I think the experience designers, because they have the kind of almost full suite, they kind of help educate businesses to understand what needs to go in to set up those departments, expectations, and helping to kind of put those teams together to ultimately ensure that businesses achieve their vision and help define a strategy to get there, really. I'd also like to clarify, this is not about suddenly all UXers needing to become experience designers, needing to focus on much more about the end-to-end. Because the role of a dedicated UX designer is pretty detailed itself. It's a big enough job as it is, because ultimately, if you've got the conducting formative research, you're actually creating the concepts, proposed design directions, sort of wireframes, prototypes, and then ideally kind of then gathering evaluative research. So ensuring the proposed designs, you've kind of got embedding measurements to kind of build that confidence in the design direction, removing that subjectiveness. So all that is, and introducing specific methodologies within the UX world and principles, and and psychology principles at that, specifically to, I know, how do you kind of encourage people to kind of increase their basket spend, or whatever that may be. There's an awful lot of principles at the low level as well, where being a UX designer is pretty fully dedicated. But this is ultimately those that are now looking to, from a UX point of view, they may start to think about, you know what, I want to kind of understand a bit more about the end-to-end experiences. I want to start beginning, how do I ensure that companies are designing for internal staff? So this is where CX and service design sort of then really play their part, and that requires dedicated expertise, whereby that's a role in itself. How do you design the right service? How do you design internal processes? How do you work for business to design those? How do you ensure you design the right experience when people turn up in branch, which may have no digital interface at all? It may be more to do with the layout of a store or a layout of a branch, or it may to do with sort of patient care. It's to do with anything really. That fundamentally is about designing for an experience. It's not designing always about a digital touchpoint, but the UX world is, and I think it'll still remain that way. I don't think there's a case for try to re-educate the UX term as something different. I think the UX term now is so synonymous with digital touchpoints that I think that's why XD, experience design, is a natural progression to include UX for digital touchpoints within that kind of setup and mix. There is still a need for agencies, absolutely, because defining strategies is still typically outsourced to agencies because of their expertise and exposure to many other sectors and environments. The same goes for CX and service design. It's still quite a new activity. So businesses and organizations are still finding their feet as to what makes a good CX designer or a service designer. So I think there's definitely a need for agencies to help continually educate and help businesses and organizations to kind of shape that, especially from a strategy point of view and visioning point of view. There is certainly a role to play in kind of agencies helping to support that. So defining the right vision and reducing the number of failed projects. So I've worked for organisations where halfway through a project, it feels like it's going well, then the company would decide, right, that's the end, project's cancelled, we're now going to move our focus into something else. And it's very, very frustrating. So I suppose part of that has been around organisations and wanted to kind of get products out to a market as quickly as possible without a clarity on their vision and strategy. It's just let's get a load of products that serve very specific needs. They are very usable, but let's just get them out to the market quickly. But it's still, they never really align to people's behaviours, or they never really kind of got a real grasp of what was the overall need that this product was looking to fulfill. And so this all comes down to, like I said, clarity of direction from the business, really. So going forward, once we start to build these experienced teams within businesses and organisations and government departments, there should be a lot more clarity. So when these projects do kick off, there's a lot more clarity as to why they've started, what the overall objective is, how they align to the end-to-end experience and what we're looking to achieve, which means businesses are saving money because they won't suddenly keep changing their proposition every 6 months, because they would have fundamentally driven out all those issues from the experience strategy phase and really kind of defining what they want to be and who they want to target and how they're going to target and why they want to target. So hopefully there'll be a lot more reduced failed projects and save a lot more money. And that's it from me. So that's the experience design summary. Hopefully this kind of gave a good insight in terms of experience design, why we're starting to kind of see an introduction of experience design, so whether that be sort of new job roles or whether you may have heard that or read it in different articles. So hopefully that kind of gives you a view as to how UX, CX and service design, as well as also experience strategy, align together, and the purpose of kind of XD being introduced now to kind of almost move our industry forward. And I suppose going back to basics as to what UX initially started out to be, which was around the design of anything. Fundamentally, it was about designing for people and their needs. And if we can kind of solve that, then we can hopefully reduce the need to feel like we need to create projects and design digital touch points and get them into the market as quickly as possible, and being very niche, being very siloed. So that hopefully we can start to remove that and get to a point now where whatever we design has a clear focus and is aligned to a vision and a strategy and is aligned to an end-to-end experience. And so I do hope you found this useful. But please do get in touch via the email on the video, which you can see there. I'm also on LinkedIn, so please feel free to send me a LinkedIn message or connect. And I'd also like to say we've obviously skimmed over a few areas today, such as a service blueprint we talked about for service design is the key artifact, but there could be a whole day session just on the benefits of a service blueprint. What do you need to do to create a great service blueprint? The same goes for customer experience. What goes into designing an experience map to design a great end-to-end experience for how you want to engage with customers across different touch points, offline and online. So I'll set up some sessions in the future, so please do look out for those. And I'd also like to finally say, please do stay safe, look after yourselves, and take care. All the best. Thank you.